Thinking back, I believe all this started with the disappearance of my girlfriend. We had an amazing connection, an intensity of spirit, and love that felt, at all times, uplifting and warm. We didn't need words. We simply existed in a state of bonded happiness. I thought that, maybe, that bliss had kept me oblivious to the terrible things going on around me. But the more I learned, the more I realized that nothing bad had happened before she disappeared. And I don't mean that she left, or that I was unable to find her. I was standing outside a movie theater with her, and an acquaintance that we'd run into by chance. I said something. He made a funny remark. She laughed, and then she was gone. Nothing remained but a slight breeze from the air spilling into the space where she'd been. The expression on my friend's face slowly dropped as he saw mine. This wasn't a joke, prank, or a trick. She'd simply blinked out of existence. Standing there, we discussed what we'd seen in hushed tones. There were several disparate little groups of people walking in and out of the theater, but none had noticed. Superstitiously, he and I circled the building, then made a run through the inside. She was nowhere to be found. Eventually, we had no choice but to return to our homes and hope that we'd imagined the whole thing. But hours passed, then a day, and then a week. Nobody had seen or heard from her. I called her parents, but never got an answer. I went around to their place, which I vaguely remember from a holiday visit, at the same time in the past, peering in the windows. I saw the dining room that I remembered, complete with furniture and settings, but the rest of the house was completely empty. Had they moved out? If so, why was the dining room still furnished? I looked around for passerbys, but the quiet suburban street sat desolate and lonely. I went by her work next. The grocery store and the bakery in which she worked ran lively with bustling energy. I watched random strangers picking out fruit and vegetables in the produce section, oddly relieved to be surrounded by life again. The streets of our hometown had been feeling increasingly deserted, but I'd only truly recognized that creeping sense of isolation once it had been lifted. Here, then, everything was fine. Life was proceeding as normal, save for the absence of my girlfriend. As I'd feared, none of her coworkers had seen her. Beginning to grasp at straws, I headed for my work, hoping that maybe she'd called and asked for me. I arrived there already uneasy. I recognized the building, certainly, but the area had the same vague quiet emptiness that had surrounded her parents' house. With a dark pit tightening in my stomach, I peered in the front windows. Oh, the front desk sat within, along with all of the pictures on the walls I remembered. I shook my head and laughed quietly at myself. It must have been the weekend. Of course nobody was there. Pulling out my keycard, I accessed the side door, intent on checking my work phone messages. If she'd called, everything beyond the reception area was empty. Blank white walls stretched off into gloomy darkness. I couldn't understand it. I'd just met her here the other day, right here by the front desk. Where had she gone? Where had my job gone? My cubicle? My coworkers? I tried to recall them, tried to retrace their faces and personalities, but I succeeded only in summoning hollow impressions and choppy experiences that felt incomplete and secondhand. I returned to the outside building. I stood in a daze, unsure what to do next. While I stood there, staring absently across the parking lot, I noticed a shimmer. The opposite building across the lot began blurring, wavering, and then it vanished. For some reason, I ran toward the phenomenon rather than away from it. I had to see something, touch something for myself. Coming to the space where it had been, I found a vast, cracked foundation, free of rubble and destruction, save for the several pipes now furiously spilling water from their jutting ends. "You!" I shouted at a businessman at the sidewalk's corner. "Me?" he asked, lowering his cell phone. "Didn't you just come out of there?" I asked, indicating the exposed foundation where a building had just been. "Yep." "Well, where'd it go?" I asked. "What do you mean? It's right there," he answered. The building that was there." He seemed confused. "There's never been a building there." "So, what, you work in unfinished foundation?" He nodded. "That's my desk, sitting over there." Indeed, a single wooden desk sat amongst the jagged bricks. "Then why are there pipes shooting water all over the place?" I shouted at him. He shrugged. "Contractors cutting corners." Not believing the surreal conversation, I looked over at the building once more, noticed his desk was gone, and turned back. But the sidewalk sat empty before me. At that moment, the true weight of what had been happening began sinking in. I fought a rising panic and tried to think. I'd read stories about things like this. Horror, science fiction. There was always a way out. If only one could think hard enough. But, in my panicked state, I couldn't recall the content of those tales. I did notice, however, the businessman I'd just talked to hadn't been cognizant of the changes. But my acquaintance at my girlfriend's disappearance had been. I had no idea where he lived, so I returned to the outside of the movie theater, hoping that he would notice strange things happening and put two and two together the way I had. I felt a brief surge of hope as I sighted him already sitting on a bench, waiting for me. "My house is a prop," he greeted me sadly, his head in his hands. "The people I know, if they hadn't already vanished, seem only shadows of their former selves. It's like the memories and experiences are blinking right out of their heads, the same way buildings and streets are." "Does anyone else notice?" I asked, sitting next to him on the bench. I chose not to comment on his overly loud despair and uneven tone. I talked to one guy who remained convinced nothing weird was going on, right up until he disappeared too. He shook his head slowly. For a time, we sat in silence, just thinking. Across the movie theater parking lot, one of several trees shimmered, wavered, and vanished. He glanced over at me, and I nodded, confirming that I'd seen it too. Another tree went a few minutes later, leaving a slight section of elevated highway visible. The highway blinked out of existence soon after. The entire sky, bright blue, white clouds, and burning sunlight, all began shimmering and wavering. He and I both straightened at the same time. "It's symbolic," he realized aloud, mirroring my thought. "Units of meaning disappearing one by one. How else could ideas, memories, even the damn sky?" Hurricane winds blasted and buffeted us as the sky itself blinked out of existence, leaving only blank, barren blackness overhead. "What could do this?" he shouted, gripping the bench. I shook my head. I had an idea, based on what I'd seen since she disappeared, but it was insane. "Do you think?" I yelled, over the loud winds. "What?" "We think, therefore we are, right?" I shouted. "I know, I think. Do you?" I think so," he yelled back. "Then we must really exist." I told him, hanging on. "That means there's hope." No more remained to be said. We clung to that bench for dear life, as trees, cars, buildings, and even the parking lot and movie theater itself flung off into the void, shimmering, wavering, and vanishing as they went. Once the air ran out, we began suffocating, but thankfully, about 15 seconds later, the concept of breathing went too. In muted, horrified relief, we sat like sentient corpses on an aging wooden bench on a small circle of the sidewalk. All that remained of the universe. "Come on, please," I said without breath, without words. We had some time left. It wasn't quite the end. She appeared with a few minutes to spare. In the exact spot she'd vanished, my girlfriend blinked back into existence. Her arrival bringing a massive wave of restoration, a split-second sphere of ideation and creation, brought everything we'd known back in a roaring moment. Running up to her through the dying breezes of renewal, I grabbed her by the shoulders. "You're back!" She smiled.
"I can't believe it. I got back."
"How long were you gone?" I asked, trying not to sound too panicked.
It took me a few minutes to fall asleep again.
She replied, excited.
It was such a good dream. I wanted to come back more than anything in the world, but it's so rare to actually get back to the same dream.
Even though I'd suspected, based on the fact that everything in our surreal existence had been based purely on her experiences and knowledge, the confirmation still hit me somewhere deep. Even as my very soul joined in my panic, I forced myself to deliver the words I practiced while watching the world ebb. "Listen to me. I don't know if this happens often, or if this is an insane and unique thing in your universe, but..." I turned and pointed at our acquaintance. "He and we're alive. We're actually alive. When you woke up, your dream started falling apart, but we remained, and we experienced every moment of it. I'm actually thinking. I'm actually here, and so is he." She looked back and forth between us, the impact of my words slowly sinking in.
"But how?"
"I don't know," I told her, trying to get the emotion just right, so that she would truly believe. Maybe there are more wonders in life than we can possibly know. Maybe you dreamed us into existence. Maybe we were already out here, souls waiting to be born. But your dream universe caught us and pulled us in. But we are here, and I can't begin to describe the horror waiting for us after you're gone."
"Souls waiting to be born?"
she asked, dazed.
"That's not it."
I frowned in askance. She looked me in the eyes.
"You died. You both died. That's why I was so happy to dream about you, to be with you again."
Oh, despair settled across my shoulders, and I slumped. She looked away.
"This was my favorite memory. Just a nice day before the accident."
Our mutual acquaintance stood sadly. "What does that mean for us, being dead? What are we? Is there anything you can do?" She said nothing for a long moment, before an idea seemed to occur to her.
"I just can't let go,"
she admitted aloud.
"But maybe that means we can all be together again."
She looked at both of us in turn.
"Hold out. I'll be back."
She blinked out of existence. We waited there for hours, a day, a week. I wondered at the difference in time between our reality and hers. She said it had taken a few moments for her to fall asleep again. Whatever she was doing, I hoped it would be quick, or else we wouldn't be there when she returned. We sat watching the world die for a second time, waiting in quiet hope and silent terror. I had the distinct fear that she would return in a similar dream, a universe of the mind that looked like ours, that she believed was ours, but which contained a version of the two of us that wasn't us. Just facades, just dream figments, faking life. We'd become merely slivers of ourselves, bare consciousness and fear by the time she returned. In a flash, all creation blinked back into existence, somehow stronger this time, brighter.
I won't wake up again.
She said with a smile and a happy conviction.
I made sure of that.
I took her hand. What did you do?
I took a ton of sleeping pills. We'll be together forever now, one way or another.
My friend came up alongside us. You did that for us? She nodded, excited. See, I told you, I said to him. You gotta live the role, be the role, even when they're not here. That's the only way they'll believe you enough to do something drastic. They can usually sense our hollowness, like a stain on their mind. The only way to avoid turning it into a nightmare is to become one with the dream.
What are you talking about?
She asked, confused. He grinned widely. I guess you were right. Go ahead, you won. I matched his grin with one of my own, only wider and hungrier.
You're not them.
She screamed, realizing her mistake too late. She pulled away, but I had her by the wrist and by the soul. Her weakened body wouldn't be able to protect her mind much longer.
Let me go!
It's far too late for that, I told her, licking my metaphorical lips in anticipation. The feast was as enjoyable as any other dreamer I'd eaten, but it was made all the sweeter by the chance to further employ my acting chops. Sitting up, I tested out her limbs one by one, and then spoke aloud, listening to the various sounds of her voice. It would be a challenge convincing others of her purely physical species that I was one of them, but I was more than up for it. For the first time in eons, I was actually excited. Excitement had almost become an unfamiliar sensation, but it was certainly warranted, as this was certain to be the role of a lifetime, specifically, her lifetime. I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. I want to give a big thank you to CreepyCavatappi for helping voice this story. Check out her channel for unsettling tales, paired with fantastic visuals. I also want to thank Troy, the toy maker, for helping with various aspects of the channel. Links to their content will be in the description. Lastly, I want to give a big thank you to Akostra and Mina, whose behind-the-scenes work makes this all possible. Thank you for watching.